Buongiorno a tutti, come state? Mi chiamo Charlotte e oggi vi parlo di alcuni verbi italiani che usano la preposizione a prima di un verbo all'infinito. Dunque, in inglese, hi everyone, today I'm talking to you about just some common Italian verbs that use the preposition a or are followed by the preposition a when they come before an infinitive verb. So, cominciamo a vedere alcuni verbi. So, let's start looking at some verbs. So, dove la mia penna? La penna blu dov'è? Ah, non so dov'è. Non importa, uso invece la penna nera. Cominciamo a studiare, for example. Cominciamo a studiare. Let's start studying. Let's start studying the verbs, for example. Cominciamo a studiare I verbi. So, cominciare is one of these verbs. So, if you're saying, for example, I'm starting to learn Italian, comincio a imparare italiano. Now, you might hear when you've got a verb that follows an infinitive verb after the preposition a, comincio a imparare. That's fine. You might hear comincio ad imparare because, for example, I'll write it down. When you've got a verb that starts with a vowel following the preposition a, let me just write that, cominciare ad imparare. A little d might be placed after the a to make it easier to pronounce and also to separate the preposition a from the next word which starts with a vowel. So that happens sometimes. You get it if you say, for example, Sara e Dio. So instead of Sara e io, and then io, so two words with vowels, one after another, you might hear ed io. So they put in this little d, which makes it easier then to separate the words and to pronounce them and to hear them, that kind of thing. So cominciare is one of the verbs that when conjugated, you follow it with the preposition a and then another infinitive verb. Per esempio, comincio a guidare, comincio a mangiare questa mela, comincio a parlare spagnolo. I am starting to learn. I am starting to eat. I am starting to speak, etc. So, cominciare a fare qualcosa. Start to do something. To start to do something. So, that's one of the verbs which is on this handout. By the way, this video is primarily for my Italian club members. That's Ciao, Chepstow. People who normally come to my meetings at the moment because of the COVID situation. I haven't been doing my usual meetings in the local public houses where I normally do them. Instead, I've been doing a video which I put onto YouTube and then send out the handout to my club members. So as soon as I feel that I'm able to return to the normal format of meeting in person with my club members, I'll be back in touch. But until then, we're going to continue to do this. So what other verbs are followed by the preposition a before an infinitive? So here's one. In fact, I'm going to choose one. Here's one that I really quite like. Provo a fare qualcosa. Provo. That's the io form in the present tense of the verb provare, which the verb provare does have a few other meanings, but when it's followed by a, it means to try to do something. So, for example, I'm trying to do my homework, or I'm trying to make a cake. Provo a fare I compiti. Provo a fare una torta. Provo a leggere il libro, eccetera. Provo a fare qualcosa. I'm trying to do something. So, provo a fare una torta, or fare I compiti. There you go. Provo a fare I compiti. So here, fare I compiti is the verb phrase. So we have an infinitive verb, fare, and then whatever the complement is. Provare a fare, to try to do something, to try to swim. Provare a nuotare, to try to speak Spanish. Provare a parlare spagnolo, scusa. So all you need to do is conjugate the verb provare. If you want to say we are trying, for example, proviamo, it's a nice ARE verb. Proviamo a, try to, what are we trying to do? Proviamo a fare una torta. We're trying to make a cake. So you conjugate the verb provare, follow it by the preposition a, and then put an infinitive verb plus whatever the remainder of the sentence is. So, provare a fare qualcosa, cominciare a fare qualcosa. So, with these examples, I'm using the present tense of the verb that's followed by a preposition. But this works in any tense. So, for example, I tried to do the homework. Passato prossimo. So on this sheet, the handout, I've actually got the present tense conjugation of the verb provare, and I've also, you don't have to see it, but you can find this online, find a verb conjugator, and I've also got the passato prossimo here. So I tried to do the homework. Ho provato a fare I compiti. I tried, I have tried. You could do the imperfect. I used to try to do the homework. Provavo a fare I compiti. I would try. Proverei a fare I compiti. I will try. Proverò a fare I compiti. Future. So you can conjugate any verb, or you can conjugate the verb in any tense and then follow it by a fare qualcosa, and it will still work. Let's have a look at some of the other verbs. So cominciare a fare qualcosa, provare a fare qualcosa. Okay, here's a few others. I'm going to read them out, and they're on this list. So in alphabetical order. Abituarsi a fare qualcosa. This is a useful one. It is a reflexive verb, abituarsi. So you need to know how to conjugate a reflexive verb before you can use this at all, really. I'm going to just conjugate it in the io form in the present tense. Mi abituo. So I'm not going to spend the lesson explaining everything about reflexive verbs, but basically when you see a reflexive verb in the infinitive, it looks like this. So abituarsi, that there is the reflexive pronoun, that si bit. So, and this is the rest of the verb. So if you put your hand over the si bit, you can see that it's an ARE verb, abituare. So it means to become used to, or to get used to, or to be what's the word? To be in the habit of doing something. So think of it like getting used to. I am used to doing something, or I am not used to doing something. Okay? So, mi abituo. This mi bit here is the reflexive pronoun which refers to me or myself, and it comes from that part there. And then here we have the normal conjugation of the ARE verb bit. So when you have a reflexive verb, you use the correct pronoun depending on which subject pronoun you're talking about, I, you, he, she, we, etc. So the I one is mi, and then abituo is just the present tense conjugation of that verb. So it's like when you say mi chiamo, It's from the verb chiamarsi, which is to call oneself. Myself, mi, chiamo, I call. Okay, so in English it would be I am used to. Okay, I get myself used to, if you like. So the point is that this verb can be followed by the preposition a when it's then followed by an infinitive. So for example, let me look at the example I've got. Okay, here's one. Mi abituo a dormire poco. Mi abituo a dormire poco. Now, even though I have a little baby, I am getting a fair amount of sleep, but less sleep than normal, hence the black rings under my eyes. So, mi abituo a dormire poco. Here I've got the preposition a, and then an infinitive verb after it, and then whatever the rest of the sentence is. So, that's abituarsi, to get used to, and you could follow it by a plus an infinitive verb. Here's another one. Aiutare a fare qualcosa. Per esempio, aiutare. So let me write the example down for you. Actually, I'll say it, then I'll write it down. Excuse me. Vi aiuto a parlare italiano. Vi aiuto a studiare la lingua italiana. Vi aiuto. So, aiuto a voi. I'm helping you. Vi aiuto a parlare italiano, let's say. Okay, so this, forget about this bit for a sec, although if you saw my last two videos, that might look familiar to you. Aiuto, I help or I'm helping. A parlare italiano. So you follow this conjugated verb aiutare with the preposition a, and then an infinitive verb. I help to speak Italian. It's not quite finished, that sentence, is it? But this here, this little pronoun here, vi, means I help you guys, voi. And it goes before the verb. Vi aiuto a parlare italiano. I'm helping you guys to speak Italian. Sì. And that's from the verb aiutare, to help. So cominciare is the next one on this list, like comincio a fare una lezione. Continuare a fare qualcosa. Now, continuare does mean to continue, but it also can translate as to keep doing something, like keep talking, or continuate voi a guardare questo video, okay? Keep watching this video, continue to watch the video. Continuate, so this is the present tense, voi form of continuare, a guardare, keep watching. Vi prego, continuate a guardare, okay? Keep watching. So instead of, like in English, we just say keep doing something, keep watching, keep going, keep listening, okay? That's different because we use the verb to keep or continue watching, continue going. We don't use the infinitive, keep to go, keep to watch. We use the ing form, okay, of the verb plus ing. So in Italian, here's a difference. Instead, with the verb continuare, you follow it with a preposition a, and then the infinitive continuare a fare qualcosa, continuare a mangiare, continuare ad ascoltare, okay? Instead of a ascoltare, we put a D in there to make it easier. The D, depending on which way you're looking. Continuate ad ascoltare. Keep listening. So that's another one. Imparare a fare qualcosa. Vuoi imparare a parlare italiano? Invitare a fare qualcosa. Okay, so the verb, so all of these examples, they're not always followed by the preposition a. Not every time you use the verb to invite or to continue or to help. For example, you can help someone or you can invite someone, But if you're inviting someone to do something, or if you're helping someone to do something, or you're continuing to do something, then you're using the verb in such a way that it needs to be followed by the infinitive. And in English, you may or may not have a preposition between the first verb and the second. But in Italian, with these verbs, if they're followed by the infinitive, you need that a. You see where I'm going with this? So, per esempio, vi invito, there's that vi invito a studiare con me. Vi invito a studiare con me. I invite you to study with me. Vi invito a studiare. Okay, the next verb on my list is prepararsi, which means to prepare yourself or to get ready to do something. So, mi preparo a insegnare. Mi preparo a mangiare la mela. Getting ready to eat my apple. So, prepararsi, like abituarsi, is a reflexive verb. So, the infinitive verb looks like this, okay? And this is one of the verbs which is followed by a before an infinitive. So I'll think of a sentence in a sec to establish how it works. But as with abituarsi, we have a reflexive pronoun at the beginning. So in the present tense, well, in any tense, it will be mi in the io form. Mi preparo. I'm getting ready. Mi preparo to do what? Mi preparo a insegnare. Okay, so here we have the verb insegnare, getting ready to teach. Now, this verb starts with a vowel, so you could put a little D in after the preposition to make it easier to hear and to understand and to pronounce. Mi preparo ad insegnare. Okay, so it's as if the D is at the beginning of insegnare. Ad insegnare. Okay, I'm getting ready to teach. So, what's the next one? Provare a fare qualcosa, to try to do something. There are other ways of saying to try to. You could use tentare di. I'm trying to attempt, if you like, tentare. And you can have, I think it's tentare di. Might have to check that. Cercare di fare qualcosa. So cercare does mean to look for, but it also, when it's followed by the preposition di, it means I'm trying to do something. Cerco di spiegare il problema. I'm trying to explain the problem. Or I could say provo a spiegare. So you need to pay attention to the verb that you use in order to use the correct preposition that follows, if indeed a preposition is used. And sometimes a preposition is different or can change depending on the meaning, so that starts getting like really high level stuff. So for now, let's just focus on the verbs that are common, that are followed by a before an infinitive. So riuscire is the next one on the list. This is difficult to translate, but it tends to be translated as to succeed. So, or to manage to do something. This verb is conjugated, as you'll see, like the verb uscire, but it doesn't have anything to do with uscire. Uscire means to go out, like to go out in the evening, you know, to go out with your friends, that kind of thing. Riuscire is to manage or to succeed in doing something, to be, I was able to do it in the end. I managed to do something, I was successful at doing something. So, let's see, okay, here's one in the passato prossimo, an example. Voi siete riusciti a capire quello che ho detto. Okay? Siete riusciti a capire. You were able to understand. So, riuscire. If you go to your verb book, hopefully you've got a verb book, something like this, the Barron's, the Barron's verb book like this, very, very good. You'll be able to find, hopefully, this verb And let me just see, dove si trova? Riuscire, has to be in there. Okay, eccolo. Here's the verb. Eccolo. Okay, so if you saw my 2 videos ago, you'll remember that eccolo means here it is. Riuscire, to succeed, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay, it does actually mean to go out again. So uscire with re in front, it does mean go out again, but it's a different meaning when you use it as to be successful. Scusate. This verb takes essere in the past tense or in any compound tense. So you don't say ho riuscito. Instead you say sono riuscito or sono riuscita. I have been successful. And you follow it. If you're successful in doing something, like to understand or successfully did your homework, sono riuscita a fare I compiti. Sono riuscita a capirti, in understanding you. Okay, so it's followed by an infinitive. If it would be followed by a verb in English with ing at the end. I was able to understand. I was able to. So in the past tense, actually, when you say I was able to do something, then you would follow it with an infinitive to understand. But if you use it with a different verb, like, so it doesn't translate the same every case. Let's think about this. So what was the verb we had? I'm starting to... okay, here's one. So, continuare a fare qualcosa. In English, I'm continuing or I'm keeping on reading. I continue to read. I keep reading. Okay, excellent. Sorry if I'm getting a bit confused or if it's coming across confused, but there's a lot of differences between each verb when you translate them back into English. So with the verb continuare a fare qualcosa, it can be translated in a couple of ways depending on how you use it. So if you use continuare a in the past tense in Italian, ho continuato a sognare, I kept dreaming. In English, you say I kept plus a verb with ing at the end. I kept going, I kept dreaming, I kept speaking, I continued to speak, however. So if you translate it as the verb continue, you use the infinitive to speak when it's in the past tense. I continued to walk. But you can also say I continued walking. I kept going. So it doesn't always translate in one way in English across all tenses and all verbs. Anyway, I'm going off the subject. Let's get back to some examples. Riuscire a fare qualcosa, when you use that verb in the past tense or any compound tenses, you're going to be conjugating it with the verb essere instead of avere, and that goes as well for reflexive verbs. So I was used to doing something. Let's have a think. Passato prossimo. Sono abituata, o mi sono abituata a cantare nella cucina. I was used to singing in the kitchen. Okay? Mi sono abituata a cantare nella cucina. Mi sono abituata. What was the other reflexive verb? Mi sono preparata ad insegnare. I got myself ready to teach. With reflexive verbs, like certain other verbs, like riuscire, you use essere to conjugate it in the past. Okay, in the passato prossimo. Okay, let's have a think. Okay, these last two verbs also take essere in the past tense, and I'm just going to give you some examples in the past tense, just to avoid, the present tense all the time. So, tornare a fare qualcosa. Tornare means to come back, but if you're coming back in order to do something else, coming back home to get ready to go out, or coming back home to eat something, that's a nice easy one. Sono tornata. Okay, this, instead of saying ho tornato, which doesn't have any relevance in Italian, doesn't exist. Sono tornata, because I'm a girl. The ending of the past participle has to agree with my gender and also the number of people you're talking about. So it's just one. Sono tornata a cenare. I came back to have my dinner, have my tea, okay, my evening meal. Sono tornata a cenare. The next one is similar in that it's also conjugated with essere. So, sono venuto, if you're a boy, venuta, if you're a girl, a fare qualcosa. I came back to do something. Here's one. Now that or those people who are in my club have seen direct and indirect object pronouns, I'm going to start using them a bit more in these videos, okay, and hopefully you should recognize what they are. Sono venuta a parlarti. I came to speak to you. Oh, there's something missing from there actually, so almost perfect. Sono venuta, I came, a, because venire, when it's conjugated, is followed by an infinitive, a parlar. So instead of saying parlare a te, which does mean to speak to you, that's fine, I can not put the final E of parlare on and instead put an object pronoun at the end. Similarly, I could use a different verb. Sono tornata in ufficio a parlarvi, to speak to you. Okay, and the reason I'll be doing that with the a preposition and then an infinitive is because I'm using a certain verb which can be followed by a plus an infinitive verb. Okay, let's look at some of the phrases that are on my sheet and see if you can understand what they mean. I'll pick a few random ones. Okay, we'll look at F. So, oggigiorno non riesco a dormire. Oggigiorno. Okay, that word there, oggigiorno, doesn't mean today day. That doesn't make any sense, but that's what it looks like. Oggigiorno means these days or currently. Oggigiorno non riesco. So that means like I'm not able to, I'm not managing, I'm not succeeding in doing something. Non riesco a dormire. I can't manage to sleep, I'm not able to sleep, I'm not managing to sleep, for example. Okay, let's have a look at a different... Okay, here's one. Vi invitiamo a cenare con noi. Vi invitiamo a cenare con noi. Cenare, that verb, to dine, to have tea, to have dinner. Okay, tea is in dinner, not tea is in drinking tea. In England or in Wales or in the UK, you can say have tea, as in to eat your food in the evening. It's not always to have tea. Vi invitiamo. Okay, so there's that little vi, and then invitiamo is in the we form. A cenare con noi. So who is this addressing? Let me show you how it's written in a sec. Vi invitiamo a cenare con noi. Con noi. We are inviting you. Okay, little pronoun there goes in front of the verb, and then it's the verb invitare, to invite, can be followed by a and then an infinitive. So we are inviting you to dine or to have dinner with us. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, here's another one. Sofia, that's a girl's name, Sofia impara a nuotare. Sofia impara a nuotare. Sofia impara a nuotare. Okay, so Sofia is learning to do something. Lei, I'm just going to write lei, impara a nuotare. I think I've already mentioned this verb. So she is learning, impara a, to do something, nuotare, to swim. Io imparo a guidare, I'm learning to drive. Imparo a parlare tedesco, I'm learning to speak German, for example. Okay, so I have on this sheet some English to Italian sentences, so let's see if we can do a couple of those. Oh, I've just said one of them. Imparo a guidare, I am learning to drive. Imparo a guidare. So let me write that down for you just so that anyone who's doing these can actually see how I would expect you to do that. Imparo. Imparare is just a ARE verb. Imparo a, because that's what the video is about, putting an infinitive verb after a, and then guidare. Imparo a guidare, I'm learning to drive. Okay, I am going to wash the dishes. So there is a section at the bottom of this handout with a description about andare a fare qualcosa. So you can use, and it's also, I haven't mentioned it yet deliberately, because in this list of the verbs that can be followed by a plus an infinitive, you've got the verb andare. Okay, so first thing, andare, when it's conjugated, present tense, io form, vado, vado a. Right, let me just write it all down. So, andare a fare qualcosa is a little bit different from when we use it in English. So, as it describes in the sheet, in English you can say, I am going to travel to France next year. I am going to study Italian in a few weeks. I am going to watch a film. I'm going to. We shorten it to I'm gonna, right? I'm gonna go and wash the dishes. I'm gonna go to France. So in colloquial English we can sort of shorten that, contract it down to I'm gonna, or I'm not gonna, but that's very informal. So we can use I am going to do something, I'm going, or I'm not going to do something, for both things that are going to happen immediately or very shortly after being said, or for things that are like in the future. They can be a few years in the future, they can be like a few weeks, they can be a few hours. We use I am going plus to do, which is an infinitive verb. We use that structure for present and sort of in the future things. In Italian, if you say vado a, per esempio, vado a dormire, buonanotte, I'm going to bed, good night. Or, ciao mamma, andiamo a fare la spesa. See you mum, we're going to go and do the shopping. Vado a fare qualcosa tends to talk about something that's immediately going to happen. Well, it's going to happen either immediately after being spoken or shortly thereafter, rather than something that's going to happen next year, or so it's not exactly the same use, andare a plus infinitive, so just be aware of that. The other thing is andare a, not followed by an infinitive verb, but vado, for example, present tense of andare in the io form, vado a Milano, vado a Torino. You can use it followed by the name of a town or a city, and that would be perfectly fine. So going to somewhere, city or town, is always going to be andare a plus the name of a town or city. However, that changes if you're going to a country. So the preposition a isn't used, instead they use in. Vado in Italia, vado in Francia, per esempio. So it's slightly different there, but it's just, it can be confusing seeing the verb andare plus a, and you think, oh, you use it with the name of a city or a town. But actually, if you're following that verb to go to do something like immediately, you need the preposition a.